The views and opinions expressed in this program do not necessarily represent those of Natural Bridges Media or KSQD's staff, volunteers, or underwriters.
Hello and welcome to Talk of the Bay. I'm your host, Len B.A., and we are having a candidate forum this evening for the House of Representatives, District 19 in California. This is the district that runs from South San Jose area out to the coast here in Santa Cruz, and then down around the Monterey Bay, including Monterey Peninsula, but bypassing most of Watsonville and virtually all of the Salinas Valley, and continuing on down the coast all the way to northern San Luis Obispo County to the cities of Paso Robles and Atascadero. So with us tonight are 4 of the 7 candidates running for the 19th Congressional District. We invited all 7 candidates, but 3 of those candidates did not respond to our invitation. Those 3 are Lars Mapstead, who is running as a Libertarian, Peter Verbica, who is running as a Republican, and Jimmy Panetta, who is running as a Democrat and is the incumbent, the one currently in office in the 19th District. So first, let me introduce the candidates who are with us. Thomas Cox seeks to address the root cause of our national issues, corruption. As envisioned by our first president, the country stands divided between just 2 political parties, leaving politics a zero-sum game for sale to the highest bidder. Thomas, a lifelong independent, owns and runs a small contracting company in Santa Cruz County. He has 3 children with his lovely wife, and they enjoy getting out into the beautiful parks and wild spaces unique to California's Central Coast. Thomas Cox, welcome to Talk of the Bay.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And also with us is Ana Luz Acevedo Cabrera, also running as an independent. She is a native of North Monterey County. She's a professor at Hartnell College, currently teaching at the intersection of business, technology, and entrepreneurship. In the coming semesters, she'll also be teaching physical science and engineering. Outside the classroom, she is a community leader and organizer in Monterey County. Her strong multidisciplinary background gives her the ability to analyze problems from multiple angles and come up with innovative solutions. Ana Luz received her bachelor's in geophysics, master's in earth and planetary science, and master's in civil and environmental engineering from UC Berkeley. Ana Luz Acevedo Cabrera, welcome to Talk of the Bay.
Hola, hey guys.
Also with us is Tuka Ghaffari. Running as a Republican. He was born and raised in California with his parents, who immigrated from Iran in the 1950s and 60s. His wife also immigrated from Iran. They live in a beautiful area. Tuka enjoys being part of the community, coaching soccer for kids. He has said, there is no left or right. There is forward or backwards. It's up to us to elect a leader who will listen and lead. Finding solutions that do not divide is key. We are diverse in our state and country, which is our strength. Tuka Ghaffari, welcome to Talk of the Bay.
Thank you and good afternoon.
And also with us is Sean Doherty, running as a Democrat for Congress. Because we deserve a government that works for us, not for corporate PACs. We can guarantee health care for all, cut costs, end wasteful wars, and reinvest in education, infrastructure, and working families. This isn't left or right. It's about reclaiming a government that serves the people. We have the resources to fix what's broken. We just need the courage to act. Sean Doherty, welcome to Talk of the Bay.
Thank you so much for having us.
Let me make sure you're getting enough sound there. Could you say that one more time?
I said, thank you so much for having us all.
Yeah, thank you for being here, and I'll get your volume levels right where they need to be shortly. Before we start, I want to explain a few quick ground rules. We're going to start by, I'm going to ask some questions, and you will each get an opportunity to answer the question that's been asked. I will address the question to you in random order, so the order will change each time with each question. I will give you up to 2 minutes to answer the question. You don't have to use the entire 2 minutes. For those of you here in the studio, that's Tuca, Ana Luz, and Sean, I will flash you a little sign that says you have 15 seconds left, and I ask you to please try to wrap it up in that time. If you go 2 or 3 seconds over, I won't hold it against you, but please try to be cognizant of the time. And for you, Thomas, because you are connected remotely and cannot see us, I will give you a verbal warning as in the most timely manner that I can. And if you just go over, I may, in fact, cut you off. So I also do want to ask
Won't be the first time.
Sorry, say that again?
I said it won't be the first time.
Good. So we understand each other. And I do want to ask you all to refrain from personal attacks, including personal attacks on candidates who are not here today. It's one thing to criticize a policy position or a vote. That's perfectly fine. You can say you disagree with that and why. But I want to assure you that if you begin to have a personal attack on anyone, those who are here and those who are not, I will turn off your microphone until we get the matter settled. So that's a strict rule here. We're going to start with these particular policy questions, and then I'm going to also review, as time allows, I'm going to review some of the voting record of the incumbent and just ask you very quickly, up or down, yes or no, would you have voted the same way? So that'll be only as time allows, and I'm sure we won't get through the whole list because I compiled quite a list of his votes. So without further ado, let me start with the first question. And if you need me to repeat the gist of the question when it comes to you, I'm happy to do that. So first, without consulting Congress, the Trump administration joined Israel in a bombing campaign of Iran, including bombing of civilian targets, infrastructure, and Iranian ships at sea, which are all violations of international treaties that the United States has ratified. The war is costing the federal budget an estimated $1 billion per day in direct military spending, and indirectly is costing consumers and federal facilities due to soaring prices for petroleum, natural gas, and synthetic fertilizers. What do you think is Congress's responsibility in regard to starting wars, and what legislation would you support or oppose, both in regard to war powers in general and specifically in regard to Iran? And Thomas, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I think that the Constitution was extremely clear. It was, in fact, explicit in giving war powers to the Congress. No act of war should be happening on international soil without approval of Congress. Unfortunately, under both parties, Democrats and Republicans, this has been eroded year after year after year until we're at this point where, carrier groups are sitting in the bay off of this foreign country halfway around the world and raining devastation upon another country. At some point, they created this artificial limit of 30 days, which is constantly just flouted. It's sort of like once you get invested, then sure, they'll vote to continue. We can't just quit midstream. So I is to act to restrain the president, but further than that, I believe that this is an impeachable offense. And I believe that invading Libya was also a violation. I think that the Constitution explicitly granted the power to make war to Congress because this is a heavy responsibility, and it should be that we decide that this war, this essentially horrendous act of violence, would only be used if the people felt that it was necessary. The two-party system has allowed this to be eroded, and Congress will not, but should, stand up and say, no, this power was reserved for us. The executive does not have this authority, and it's time to take it back.
Thank you. And I want to direct that same question regarding the war in Iran to Sean Doherty.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I agree with everything that Thomas just said. This was an illegal war, both with respect to international law and the Constitution, I would support impeaching Donald Trump and Secretary of Defense Hegseth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio and many others. I think we also need to talk about why this war happened. Joe Kent resigned from his position as the top official in counterterrorism because he said that it was Israel, actually, that persuaded Trump to launch this war. And we need to talk about that very serious problem. And in this district, that's particularly relevant, given that our representative, Jimmy Panetta, has taken a lot of money from the Israel lobby. In fact, that's his top donor for his entire 10 years in office. And that was his AIPAC specifically was his top donor in the 2024 election cycle. And in order to have a representative who is fighting against these kinds of wars of aggression, I think that we need to have representatives who are not taking money from those kinds of compromising special interests. And I want to point out that I'm actually endorsed by Track AIPAC, which is an organization that investigates political donations to candidates, and people can go to trackaipac.com and see that I have $0 from the Israel lobby.
All right, thank you. Ana Luz Acevedo Cabrera, the same question for you.
Yeah, I mean, they've already sort of dived into the depths of this, but I'll take a different angle on it. I think about the constituents. I think about the people that are affected every day, both in Iran and here. Seeing like infrastructure fall apart in a different country. As a former civil engineer, that kind of breaks my heart because it takes a lot of effort to build infrastructure, and it does impact people's lives over there. And I think sometimes we forget that there is the average person on both sides that is affected the most. Not the leaders, not the people in power, but the average person that gets to, carry out their life. So on this side of the war, we have oil prices going up. We have the cost of everything that is connected to oil prices going up. And so you have the constituents, you have the American people that are affected from two sides. They're affected because their taxpayer money is going to fund this war, and they're also affected because the prices of the war are impacting their day-to-day life. So this is very unfair to the American people, and I think Congress could be doing a better job of checking the executive branch from withholding the funds that are supporting this.
Thank you. And Tuku Kufari, regarding the Iran war.
Hi, good evening. The bombing that happened in Iran is interesting. A lot of Iranians call this a rescue, not a war at first. And sadly, yes, they did hit a school. And that was done because the same playbook is done by Hezbollah. They actually will store bombs, missiles, ammunition at schools and hospitals. And we've seen that already. The people of Iran actually have taken photos and dance, and they actually will be excited when the United States is going after the mullahs over there in Iran. And that's been more of a rescue and a blessing to them. And I've never seen so many people excited about that from the Iranian population, not just there, but over here. I have relatives over there, and we've seen photos, and they're excited over there. They actually will call Trump Amu Trump. Amu means uncle in Farsi, and that's a high regard to be called someone in family. So to them, it's a different perspective than what we have here in America. Sure, none of us like war. None of us like for anyone to be killed. I don't either. But this was something because Iran has kept on developing uranium from 3% to 20%, which is for medical. And then they're on the way up with intelligence from Israel, 80%, 60 to 80% uranium. They're on their way up to 98%, which is weapons grade. And Iran has been publicly known saying constantly we need to bomb Israel and the United States. This is something that the President of the United States is trying to ensure our safety and security in the United States here. Soaring oil prices, well, the Strait of Hormuz, 90% of the oil goes to Russia and Japan and India and other countries, not here. The prices have gone up. If you look at Gas Buddy, for example, you can see the whole map. New York and California have been always head-to-head on prices. But New York is a lot lower than we are here in California. That's because we keep losing refineries. We're down to 5. So the oil price is up, or gas prices in this area is because of the regulations. And another thing is that the Iranian government has been empowered with money and funds, and it didn't go to the people. Obama sent $1.35 trillion in cash. Biden removed the restrictions on oil sales that Trump set up, Trump 1.0.
Your time's up.
Thanks.
All right, next question. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which was passed by Congress last year, made tax cuts passed under the first Trump administration, which were set to expire, permanent, adding an estimated $3.4 trillion to the federal deficit over the next 10 years. The bill also cut funding for Medicaid and for SNAP, the food assistance program, and dramatically increased funding for the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security, which includes ICE and the Border Control. Nearly half of the tax savings from extending the first Trump tax cuts will go to the top 2.5% of Americans, those making over $450,000 per year. So my question is, do you think the current federal tax system is a good one? And what changes to tax policy would you support? And I'll start with you, Sean.
Okay, thanks. I see the role of taxation as being primarily two things. One, providing funding for programs, and two, eliminating the existence of billionaires. So as far as income tax goes, I want to see us move back to a top marginal rate like what we had before Ronald Reagan. When our country was most prosperous, the tax rate on the top marginal rate was something like 90%. And I think we need to go back to that. I think our income tax should be preventing people from accumulating these ridiculous amounts of wealth, like what we see with Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, et cetera. And secondly, I would support a direct tax on wealth, like what we see being proposed in California with that ballot proposition that we're all signing signatures to get onto the ballot. I would support a federal wealth tax on assets, including global assets, like is being done with the California proposition, something that would be above the 10% growth rate that we see with billionaires. The billionaires, their wealth goes up by about 10% every year at least. And we need to, just by them doing nothing, and we need to have a wealth tax that is shrinking that, because these billionaires can buy our government and they can take complete control of our economy. Well, actually, I think that's all I have to say about taxes. Tax the rich.
All right. Tuka Ghaffari, I ask you about tax policy.
I think taxes should be fair across the board. Everyone can pay the same amount of tax. If someone's wealthy, we shouldn't go after them primarily, because wealthy people, to me, give jobs. Someone said to me when I was coming into a property, I was looking at it, he was banging at the door and with a hammer and nail, and he said, "No poor man ever gave me a job." And that sticks to me as a real estate agent. And right now, I'm thankful for my job where I work over in Silicon Valley. There was 2 people that started Google, and I have a job over there. But that's where I stand on taxes, is that we should equally tax, but we don't need to tax the American people more than necessary for the infrastructure for this country. It should be just be a little tax and let people enjoy their time, their money with their family, with vacation, retirement, buying a property, the American dream.
All right. Thank you. And Thomas Cox, I will repeat the question for you. You mentioned that you didn't hear it entirely, regarding tax policy. I'm assuming you're fairly familiar with current tax policy, and the question is, what changes to tax policy, if any, would you support?
Yeah, the right wing of this country often kind of fantasizes about the 1950s as being this golden age of America. This administration seems to want to turn back the clock even farther to the 1890s and dreams about supporting the entire infrastructure of the federal government with tariffs alone. So I would like to point out that in the 1950s, the marginal tax rate on the highest earners was about 6 times higher than it is today, especially if you take into account what the strategies that are available to these people to avoid paying taxes. The Panama Papers was an interesting leak a few years ago from one single law firm, Mossack Fonseca, I believe is what it was, and they were representing people that would incorporate companies in another country to help alleviate their tax burden. So the clients of this one firm were able to avoid $200 billion a year in taxes paid to the American government. I agree that, entrepreneurs and wealthy people have a role in helping organize and helping create jobs in this country, but there seems to be a problem with recognizing that the education of their workforce and infrastructure that their companies rely on has to be paid for. And I think that the people that are the working class people, the middle class people, end up paying for all of that. And actually, lately, nobody's been paying for it. So our interest rates are climbing to the point where if we didn't get this proposal where the military is getting $1.5 trillion, interest rate on our debt would have been the highest single expenditure of the federal government. Now it is back to second with this almost doubling of the federal military budget. But this
You have
is
15
not
seconds.
This is not the way that you run a balance sheet. So I think that the number one thing, the first thing to do would be to further investigate offshoring and tax avoidance in the international economy. People.
Thank you, Tom. Your time is up.
But it has not. Thank you.
And Ana Luz Acevedo Cabrera on taxing.
I think we need to separate personal income tax from corporate income tax because I think oftentimes we do think that the rich people are going to be the ones that create more jobs. And yes, there could be a tendency for that. I mean, I coming from an entrepreneurial side and been in Silicon Valley, I can see where some of that comes from. But I think there's a difference between the expectation that they're going to create jobs and the actual creation of jobs. So I think where we could work with is on the corporate tax side. Could we support corporate tax such that it enables more entrepreneurships and more creation of jobs? And I think if we can focus on that side and reduce the cost of creating more jobs and fostering innovation, then I think it shifts the dynamic. And so it, separates the just being wealthy from actually being an entrepreneur and creating jobs. So just wanted to point that difference. And I mean, I think ultimately from a simple perspective, I think we all need to pay our fair share of taxes. And yes, would it be nice that we didn't have to depend on so many taxes? That would be great, because when, if we don't have to have such large expenditures where, we can go after anything that is currently not being funded properly, I think that's one way that we could reduce taxes. Just identifying where is the money going and how is it being properly allocated. So I think before we raise taxes, we have to do that legwork to make sure that we're more efficient with our financing and that we are not accruing more debt. But beyond that, I think the focus needs to be on entrepreneurship and what we can do to support that with our tax system.
Thank you. For listeners who may just be tuning in to Talk of the Bay here at KSQD, we're having a candidate forum for the 19th Congressional District, which includes most of the coastal area between Santa Cruz and Paso Robles, and it does not include the areas in the 20th Congressional District, which covers most of Watsonville and Salinas Valley. So if you live in the 19th District, stay tuned. You're listening to 4 of the 7 candidates. The 3 of the candidates did not respond to our invitation, but we have 4 of them with us now. And I'm going to proceed right ahead with my next question. The U.S. has the highest per capita expenditures for health care in the world. And yet we have health outcomes in almost every category far lower than virtually all other industrialized economies. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act cut Medicaid coverage for low-income Americans, which may lead to even worse outcomes. What do you think should be our nation's priorities in health and health care? And I'm going to direct that question first to you, Sean Doherty.
Okay, great. Well, I'm a Bernie-crat. Bernie is actually how I got involved with electoral politics in the first place. I'm a strong believer in an expanded Medicare for all system. I think we need a single-payer system in which medical care is free at the point of use. And I would certainly support a Medicare for all system at the national level, but I would also support an approach like Ro Khanna has recently proposed, in which each state could implement their own single-payer healthcare system, and the federal funds that would normally be going to that state, like for Medicare, Medicaid, ACA, Affordable Care Act subsidies, for example, could then go directly into that single-payer system. And I think if we were to pass a system like Ro Khanna is proposing, then we could pass CalCare. And, the Vermont voters also passed a ballot proposition to implement a single-payer system in their state, but it ultimately failed because they couldn't get the funding. But Ro Khanna's bill would fix that. So I would support a single-payer system either at the national level or at the state level using federal subsidies.
All right. Thank you. Tuku Ghaffari, same question about healthcare and health in the U.S.
Well, healthcare has an interesting dynamic today because of Obamacare or different involvement of government. So back in Silicon Valley when I got my first job in a high-tech company, Sun Microsystems, they said, you're covered. You can go get a root canal. You can get a knee surgery even today after work if you wanted to. We were covered right away. And that was from when the health industry was private. Companies handled it themselves. When government gets involved, it's costlier. It's much more costlier, and it keeps going up every year, another 10, 12%, 14%. And it's getting unaffordable for people who do have to be paying for it, like myself. Back in the 90s, when I was working also in the 2000s, even in Japan or back here, people from Canada were coming down here. I'd meet them all the time in the hospital. They came here because the government wouldn't let them get a surgery or something they needed, like a hip surgery, hip replacement. Why? Because they had to wait in line the government said you have to wait another 2 years or 6 months. Over here, you can just pay money and you can get the care that you need. I don't know why we're going to using government to get involved, because private industries do a better job. Look at the inventions we have, like Google, the internet, telephone, airplanes, cars. Government didn't get involved. Government doesn't create jobs. Government doesn't create wealth or create inventions. Let the industries handle it. And look at the health insurance also with fire or homes. Same thing. Just if the government gets involved, it's more complicated and people lose out.
All right, thank you. I think, have I covered everyone on this question here? No, I have not.
I was like, don't forget about it.
I know, I'm trying to keep track here.
Out too.
All right, well, you're next, Thomas. I apologize for losing track of my list here.
Okay. I think that the healthcare issue is illustrative of the point that I'm trying to make with my candidacy, in that there was this moment in the country where people realized that people were being priced out of basic care. Treatable illnesses were turning into medical emergencies, which would then end up being treated on the taxpayer dollar because of EMTALA. I think that when this moment arose and the Democratic Party had the trifecta, they had the House, they had the Senate, and the presidency, what they ended up passing was the corporate wish list for healthcare. What they ended up passing was what the insurance companies thought would make them the most money. And that was because they were working for their donors and not working for their constituents. I think that a single-payer healthcare system, at least as a backstop, at least as an available option for people, would be totally feasible, especially in the context of this extremely expensive war that has just been dropped on us with a moment's notice. It's totally affordable. And that was what people were demanding. I'm not going to pretend to be a healthcare policy expert. I'm just saying that the people of America had this moment where they elected the Democratic Party and they expected them to deliver this good, but in response, they got the corporate wish list. The representatives work for their donors. They do not work for their constituents. My candidacy is about changing that through constitutional amendment of publicly financed elections so that when these issues happen, when these moments of need arise, we don't get short shrift in service of the corporate interests and in service of the billionaire donors. Right now, winning an election gets you $150,000 salary, but working for the corporate donors gets you $500,000 every year.
Your time is up.
Who are you going to stand with?
All right, thank you. And Ana Luz Acevedo Cabrera, healthcare.
Yeah, so I always think about what does each side have something to offer? Like, what is the government good for? What is the private sector good for? So, and I think we need to acknowledge those strengths and look to develop something that's going to play to the strengths of both of them. So from my perspective, yes, the private sector is good at innovation. The private sector is good at expediting things. And then the government, the focus of the government should be to make sure that all citizens are taken care of. So I think what I would propose is that we have a base layer of healthcare, meaning that we cover the very, very basic, which is preventive healthcare, and then you have a high deductible layer for everything else. But that way, everybody in this country has some sort of health insurance, which is cheaper, right? Because from an economics perspective, when everybody has health insurance, the cost goes down. So have a base layer healthcare that everybody gets, and then have the private sector exist on top of that, where the insurance layers can exist on top of that. Which, if you look at it from the perspective of the employer, well, it would be cheaper because you're only covering the difference between the deductible layer of the baseline plan and whatever else that they need to provide the best healthcare for the people that work for them. So I think there's a place for corporate America, and then there's a place for the government, and so we need to make that clear distinction where we don't leave everybody behind and have some sort of base layer that takes care of preventive health care and prevents people from going bankrupt by having some sort of cap on a protection layer, I want to call it, for high deductible for people. And think about it too. Many people actually just stay with a job because of health insurance. So we need to enable entrepreneurship by giving people the freedom to leave a job that's no longer in alignment for them, and not have to worry about the health insurance aspect of it.
Thank you. Well, we're going to go to the next question now. Outside the United States, there is a broad political consensus that global warming is caused by human activities, chiefly by the extraction and burning of fossil fuels. And in the scientific community, that consensus is practically universal. The Department of Defense's own internal planning documents are predicting a global migration crisis due to droughts, floods, disease epidemics, and crop failures exacerbated and increased by global warming. The president has called global warming a hoax, and his administration, along with Republicans in Congress, has eliminated tax credits for wind and solar power and for electrification initiatives, has canceled solar and wind power contracts on public lands and the outer continental shelf, has deregulated methane emissions from oil and gas fields, has rolled back appliance and vehicle energy efficiency standards, and is opening up new areas of public lands for fossil fuel extraction. Do you support the administration's energy policies? And if not, what policies would you support to address energy and climate change? And I'll direct that question first to you, Tuka Ghaffari.
I'm sorry, I'm just writing notes. Global warming is an interesting topic. Yes, there are emissions from our cars or other sources. I agree with that. But if you look at the geology of the rocks and formations, there's been a record of temperatures going up over time, over hundreds of years, thousands of years. Our key is, as humans, we should adapt to the environment that we're in. Now, if you look at batteries, wind, and solar, let's look at some government programs like projects like when Obama was president, Solyndra. Lots of money from the taxpayers, and it just went to waste. Ivanpath, same thing over there. With solar, they had also, it's just gone to waste. And if you look at all the environmental impact on there, on the birds or wildlife out there that's been killed, there's a high impact there. Now, Moss Landing is one of my key ones. It's a battery array. It's along the coast. Government's push for green, they don't know what they're doing because by the coastal range, you have high moisture. I used to run trains into the Moss Landing over in that plant there. And the problem is there's so much moisture, the tracks get rusted, the gates don't go down. So I know there's a high moisture content in the air. Lithium ion does not mix with moisture. These batteries should be inland more. Let private industries find, discover, invent, create, and build a product that's better. But government pushing it, they're not doing the right thing. And right now we have contaminated soil for our berries, strawberries along the coast there. And people were entrapped in their homes. They can't just pick up, pack up, and buy another house somewhere else and move. This is imprisoning people. And another thing is oil, cars. If you look at in the 1970s, you couldn't see across the bay there in San Jose or Los Angeles, and in the 80s. But today, we probably have about 5 times more vehicles on the road, and you can smell the air. It's clean. You can see across the valley.
Thank you. Next, I will direct the question to you, Ana Luz, regarding energy and climate.
Yeah. So, I mean, we do have to differentiate between just regular climate change and anthropogenic climate change. So there's going to be a natural effect, but then there's also a lot of influence coming from humans. And so I think, it's easy to dismiss climate change just because it's like, oh yeah, it's a natural thing, but there is a human component. And so to that human component, I think there's a lot that could be done on that front. We need to look at the different aspects of it, right? So there's the renewable energy side. I mean, solar is pretty successful at achieving what you need to do. So I think if there's any investments that we need to make, it's probably in increasing solar in people's homes and in office spaces. That you have people concerned about with wind and how the birds are affected. Well, then there shouldn't be any concern about solar because that's just on someone's roof. So I think if we move away from conversations around, oh, is it man-made or not man-made? Is it this or that? It's like, really, can we just increase our solar capacity, and can we decrease our dependency on fossil fuels? Because at the end of the day, that's a finite resource, and just from like a strategic perspective, you don't want to have a finite resource to depend on. So it's just a smart thing to do from a strategy perspective. Now, in terms of transportation, could we tackle it from that angle? Definitely increase public transit and reduce the barriers for people biking, such as having protected bike lanes. And then in general, like from the perspective of, I see we have 15 seconds. I can go on and on about this topic. So I'll stop for now.
Okay, thank you. And finally, or not finally yet, but I'm going to direct the question to you, Sean Doherty.
Sure. I have a pretty hard line on climate change. I think it's definitely real, and I think it's almost exclusively the man-made aspect of it that we're concerned about, and I don't think that's even really controversial amongst the people in this district, aside from a small minority. And I think that we need to take some really hard lines on, for example, banning any further permits for fossil fuel drilling, especially on federal lands. We're getting, I'm trying to find a polite word, we're getting destroyed on the international stage by the likes of China because they're embracing reality and they're manufacturing solar panels, for example, in huge volumes. Meanwhile, we're stuck in the 20th or 20th century pretending that fossil fuels are the future. And I think that mostly has to do with the corrupting influence of the fossil fuel lobby. And so I don't know what else to say. Like, we have to stop any further drilling. We have to move to renewables. I think solar and wind are absolutely feasible. They're not incompatible with a thriving economy. And for the sake of my child and future generations, like I would take an extremely firm position on that.
Great. Thank you very much. We're going to take a really short break.
I haven't said.
You're right. Thank you for catching me. That's the problem with no eye contact. I'm ready to jump to the next thing. Thomas, please proceed. I apologize.
Yeah, I think that our Democrat and our Republican have both represented their talking points to a T. The lithium-ion battery is dangerous, right? That's what our Republican told us. The old-timers who've lived in this area for a long time heard this story about the lithium battery fire and were like, I remember in the 80s when the oil tank for the power plant caught on fire and it burned for weeks and they couldn't do anything about it. And at the same time, he points to our clean air thanks to California's car emission standards, while at the same time the president attacks those standards as he sees them as a threat due to their national recognition. People produce cars that meet those standards that are for sale on the national market because California is such a big market, so he puts them under attack. And at the same time, our Democrat tells us that we're going to ban federal drilling, we're going to ban drilling on federal land. And Biden said that. That was a big part of his campaign. And he did ban it. And then about 2 months later, he repealed it. And extraction on federal lands continued. Once again, this was something that was not done as a law, but as an executive order, which is just a trend that continues to grow. That, we flip-flop back and forth on these issues because it's so hard to make law. I believe that climate change is real. I believe that it can be addressed. I don't think we're going to compete with China on the cost of producing solar panels, but I do think that they are the most cost-effective and stable solution to our energy problems. The transportation industry accounts for almost 30% of emissions nationwide, and that can be cut dramatically with solar battery setups and electric vehicles.
You have less than 10 seconds.
Even on cargo transportation. It's interesting that this issue, by the way, dropped out of the news cycle completely in the 2024 election cycle, while people continue to feel the effects, actually having some of the hottest, most deadly heat waves in the history of the country during that cycle.
Thanks. I'm going to cut you off right there.
It matters when it's politically expedient.
Thomas, I'm going to have to cut you off there. Thank you. We're going to take a really short break. We will be back with 4 candidates for House of Representatives District 19 here in California right after this. Don't go away. If you're just tuning in, we are having a congressional candidate forum for California District 19, and the candidates who responded to our invitation include Thomas Cox, Ana Luz Acevedo Cabrera, Tuca Ghaffari, and Sean Doherty. And Thomas Cox is joining us by phone, and Ana Luz, Tuca, and Sean are here in the studio with us today. And so far we have asked some questions about healthcare and about climate change and about the war in Iran. And my next question is basically about democracy. Many states and Republicans in Congress are attempting to limit access to voting, and the virtually unlimited campaign spending unleashed by the Supreme Court Citizens United decision means we have a sort of overwhelming amount of money being spent on campaign advertising. There's aggressive gerrymandering going on in many states, which was sparked originally by the president urging Texas to redistrict. And we hear almost daily attacks on the media, often simply for asking a question. And right now, the Trump administration is openly ignoring several court orders. Because of these items, many are concerned that democracy in America is in danger. Do you think that our democracy needs to be strengthened? And if so, what policies would you support to do that? And I'm going to start by directing that question to you, Sean Doherty.
Sure. This is something I care a lot about. Number one, I'm concerned about campaign finance, and I want to overturn the Citizens United ruling. I want to, via a constitutional amendment, empowering the Congress to implement a public campaign finance system so that our elected officials will no longer be beholden to these special interests, these campaign donors. Number two, we already talked about this a little bit in a previous question, but I want to eliminate the existence of billionaires through our tax policy. I think that billionaires are a threat to economic innovation, and I think that they're also a threat to democracy, because as long as they exist, they have this disproportionate amount of power, and they can control our government. And beyond that, democracy, I want to support a fairer distribution of wealth and power in our economy through labor unions. So, for example, how could I support labor unions? I would eliminate right to work laws throughout the country. I would also introduce laws that would support the creation of worker co-ops and simplify the tax codes for those. And for those who don't know, a worker co-op is a company in which the workers all own shares in the company. So I'm concerned also about the attempt by the president to suppress voter turnout through these ID laws. And he's also threatening to send ICE out to these polling stations. I would not support efforts to introduce these kinds of voter ID laws, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. I'll address the question regarding the state of democracy to you, Tuga Ghaffari.
So it's really interesting to see this country, and born and raised here, and then also visiting back to Iran and seeing the differences. So we have a great country. I love this country dearly, and that's why I'm running. But to have this issue of voter ID is really interesting to me, because in Iran, you have to show your birth certificate in order to vote. Why can't we have this here? Since there are many people that were let in this country in the past administration, of course we're going to have to do something to keep our integrity of our voting system. And that's something for every American that we should be concerned about. So what we have here is a great system. Now, as a talking about billionaires' tax or not being fair, well, I think as an American, we should all be fair. Everyone should pay taxes. That's fine. I understand that for the basic infrastructure we have in this country: roads, bridges, libraries, airports. That's what builds this nation, so we can come out here and start a company or start a business. Look at the people we lost, like Lindsay Snyder or the founders of Google. They hired people. Between the Google founders, there was 45 companies they had here, and those are all gone now because of this wealth tax that's on the ballot that's going to come up. Those people had jobs making quite a bit of money. They have their families. They go to vacation. They go buy gas. They buy food. They go to restaurants. All those people are now affected also with their jobs. So I think what we should do is treat everyone fairly as Americans and not look at specific people like the rich. Everyone should be equal.
Thank you. Next, direct the question regarding the state of democracy to Annalise.
Yeah, I always like to separate things. So in this case, the voting aspect of it, since my colleagues here brought it up, I think it's fair to prove that you're a U.S. citizen when you're voting, because that is, the requirement to vote. But there's a difference between that and having ICE or any other people extraneous to this involved. I think that's completely unnecessary and almost like a violation of our rights. So it doesn't have to get to that point. I think if you can't prove the citizenship, just bring your passport and you're good to go, right? We're just voting and that's it. Now moving to other topics, it was brought up with gerrymandering. I always think about what is it costing the average citizen to do anything. If it's going to cost citizens to pay for gerrymandering, then we don't have to do it, because that's not a good use of funds. So I always look at it from that lens. And then as far as like democracy, I think our biggest threat is really special interest groups. So if we can get money out of politics, in particular from special interest groups, then I think we'll be in a better place. So I think some ways that we can achieve that is by putting a cap on how much people are allowed to fundraise for campaigns, and also, making sure that there's term limits for different positions. Like, for instance, this one that we're running for U.S. House of Representatives, there should be term limits for that. And there should be a cap on how much you're allowed to raise so that you don't have to depend solely on special interest groups, which are the biggest risk and threat to democracy, because it's not really addressing the average citizen. It's just addressing a small group, and usually it's like the people in power. So I think that's where I would shift the conversation.
Thank you. And Thomas Cox, you're next.
Yeah, this is the cornerstone of my campaign. I think that the issue that defines all issues is the unlimited campaign contributions as introduced by Citizens United, as you said. I do all this through a constitutional amendment. The Supreme Court, in its Citizens United decision, expressed that it was very skeptical of the FEC's role in regulating campaign finance. And frankly, their constitutional ground is strong. The Constitution gives power to the states to run elections. This is not effective. We need a constitutional amendment to create publicly financed elections. My proposal is outlined on my website, coxforcongress.com. That's COXE for Congress.com. And it would create accounts with the Treasury to run your campaign with. The marginal advocacy through political action committees also needs to stop. I'm encouraged to hear Mr. Doughty also advocate for a constitutional amendment. He didn't have any details, but what I am saying is publicly financed elections specifically. This amount of money that comes through the campaign system is a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of money that is up for grabs to be regulated by Congress. It is extremely cheap to buy your representative if you are in one of these industries. The oil industry is one of the hugest and one of the most influential in the country. I encourage people to read Robert Caro's biographies to see how this money works, how it flows through the system, and the way that corruption works in this country. The only way to resolve this is to create publicly financed elections.
You have 10 seconds.
Yeah, if we do not stand up to this moment and realize what has happened to our democracy, that it has been put up for sale, we will fail. As foreign money comes in, as we have put our money into other countries' elections, and it has
Your time is up.
Instability in theirs, it will happen to us.
All right. Well, thank you. We are actually, running close to not much time left. So I had promised you each a chance to make a closing statement. And I'm going to start with you, Thomas Cox. And again, you have a couple of minutes. You don't have to use it all. Thanks.
Yeah. So once again, the main goal of my campaign is to create publicly financed elections on the federal level. George Washington saw this coming. He served 2 terms in the presidency of the United States as a brand new country, and he saw the petty bickering between the 2 parties that were existing at the time, and saw that the interests of the country were starting to slip further and further down the line. At this point, politics has become a zero-sum game. The patronage, the cronyism, and the corruption have taken all the sum of our collective building and decided that it should be divided amongst the supporters of the winner. If we want to take our country back, if we want to be part of the solution and continue this experiment, to continue this radical system that we created in this world, then we need to recognize that we are not surviving, that our country is becoming more corrupt every year. We are looking at the most corrupt administration in history, but if we do not fix this, there will be another that will make Trump look like Nixon, that will make this administration look like, oh, he only stole $30 billion. He could have had $1 trillion easily. It's time. I would not be in this race if I didn't think that we were on the edge of slipping down into an authoritarian system where
you have 10
money
seconds.
Makes decisions. If you would like to read my proposals, which include creating publicly financed elections and banning the pardon, please go to coxforcongress.com. That is
Your time's up.
E.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ana Luz, go ahead.
Yeah. So I just want to take a moment to thank the listeners for showing up for democracy, because this is how we get people engaged. The next step, of course, would be for you guys to go out to vote. Make sure you bring people with you. That's really important. Myself, I'm running as an independent, and I think because, as you notice, like, I'm not tied to a political party, and my focus is on the solutions. I'm an engineer by training. I had different multiple engineering careers, and the bottom line is I'm focused on the problems and the solutions. That's it. And bringing the cost down to everything. I mean, I think we need to be operating more lean. Now, my focus areas are housing affordability, healthcare accessibility, and infrastructure improvements, infrastructure resilience. So you guys heard what I had to say about those topics. I didn't get too much into the infrastructure resilience, but the bottom line is that we need to have risk-based regulations that would be able to prevent catastrophes like what happened with the Moss Landing power plant fire. So there's a place where technology and new technology can exist, but it needs to be properly assessed. So that's something I didn't get to touch on, but I did touch on the healthcare one, and on the housing side, we need to increase the housing supply. So I know I'm running out of time, so check out, Ana Luz for Congress. It's on Google Sites as well as on bit.ly/Google Congress. Ana Luz for Congress. So thank you guys for listening.
All right. Sean Doherty, your closing statement, please.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I think this is really fantastic to have all the candidates, welcomed. All the candidates have been welcomed. And I think it's a real shame that there are some candidates that did not attend, particularly the incumbent. There shouldn't be a rubber stamp in this election. And I think it should be very clear from this session that I am a bold progressive. I think if you're a fan of the Tom Hartman show, you're going to love what I would do as a representative. I would certainly fight for all the issues that progressives care most about, particularly Medicare for all and affordable housing. I'm running for Congress because we need representation in D.C., and I don't think that we have that right now. I think that there's a real choice this election to choose a representative who will fight for the constituents, not for big donors. And if I am representative, I'm going to fight to stop the wars. I'm going to fight to stop the genocide in Gaza. I'm going to fight to stop the war in Iran. I'm going to fight to get money out of politics, a constitutional amendment to end Citizens United. And finally, I will fight, as I said, for Medicare for all, to abolish ICE. And yeah, thank you for listening, and please visit seanforcongress.org.
Thank you. And Tuka Gufari, your closing statement, please.
Yeah.
I want to run and represent the people for all the people and for we the people. I'm a person that's going to be boots on the ground. I want to meet with people and help the people out. For example, people want to build housing. I want to find out what regulations are stopping them so I can remove these things. I am a Republican for the main reason of two things: small government, less taxes. People should be free so they can innovate. Scotts Valley itself has companies started, like, for example, Netflix. This is what's great about our area. Now, again, my parents are from Iran. They don't have that freedom. And what Trump is doing, people will disagree, but the people of Iran are so happy to be free. We have that freedom here. Let's not lose that. Now, about taxes, real quick. Reagan and Humphrey Bogart, once they made their amount of money, it's going to be taxed past that amount to 90%. They stopped working, and that's why Reagan came in and our economy took off. Why should we tax people so much that they don't want to work anymore? Let's let people innovate and work and start companies. Government should stay out of the way, and all these programs are making people dependent. And if you're dependent, you're taking away the life and dreams of American citizens. It's okay to struggle, because then you'll invent something and create a company and help create jobs in the future. Government can't help. And I think government has a spending problem, so we can charge less taxes to the American citizens and enjoy our lives.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. I'm so sorry we're out of time.